Okay, good enough. Now, here's the next thing I want to get to. This is the second article that kind of set me off. I got a video to respond to here in just a second, but I wanted to get. I would be remiss if I don't put this up because this is really what set me off. Chris Williamson of all people. Of course, it's Chris who sets me off. All right, you want to talk about grade A simping, pandering, pussy ass shit? This is it right here, and I feel no compunction about like saying this about the guy. Never be vulnerable in front of your girlfriend is common manosphere advice. Well, first off, it's not advice, but let's continue. The guy I was talking to is more alpha than pretty much every other human that's ever existed. He never mentions throughout this thing who he's talking about. And yet he told me a story of how he sobbed on the bathroom floor in his girlfriend's arms when the pressure got too much for him. Okay. Then he got up, dusted himself off, and went out to dominate his challenges, unnamed challenges, and become a world champion. This is what makes me think he didn't write this. There's subtle little things in like AI that I'm starting to pick up on. Like this could be like an AI chatbot, but here, we'll pretend this is legit. Here's the thing. Hiding your vulnerability from the world doesn't make you any less vulnerable. It just makes you less honest. No, it actually doesn't. In fact, if anything, being in control of your emotions makes you more honest, especially as a guy. Why, children? Later.
Hello there, children.
Why, children?
How's it going?
Because men and women are fucking different. Our brains are not the same. Our architecture is not the same. We are not wired the same, Chris Williamson. There you go. Keep going down. Here you go. You don't change the way you feel by hiding your feelings from the world. Okay. Limits on speech are just limits on sincerity. Like this is grade A prime copy AI bullshit. If I were to go to copy AI and I would say, you know what, copy AI, I really need a big, nice viral tweet on male vulnerability. Can you write me one? Sure thing. Hold my beer. This is what would be what would be the result. See, I honestly don't think this is Chris doing this. I think it's his PR company that's actually throwing this out there. I doubt he would cop to this. If you believe that being vulnerable makes you a pussy, how do you arrive at the conclusion that feeling vulnerable and also not being able to open up about it somehow makes you less of a pussy? Well, because that's not the motivate. That's not the impetus. Because women don't want to hear about your bullshit. They don't care about your problems. What do you want, Mr. Mind? Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. Really, again, with the Lisa Sparks thing. I don't even know who the fuck Lisa Sparks is. Is she a porn star? She's not my porn. I don't ride with that, dude. Sorry, bro. Trollbot, smash it. Thank you. Let's play whack-a-mole. Continuing on. There we go. Never be vulnerable in front of your girlfriend. Okay, so if you believe that being vulnerable makes you a pussy, how do you arrive at the conclusion that feeling vulnerable and also not being able to open up about it somehow makes you less of a pussy? Okay, feeling vulnerable. Usually it's not a feeling of vulnerability. It's a feeling of frustration. It's a feeling of being pissed off. It's a feeling of being out of control. That's what it is. It's not a feeling of vulnerability. Vulnerability is expressing it, telling somebody about it. Hey, here's my Achilles heel. Please don't fucking use it. Please, Ajax or whatever. Don't shoot me in the fucking Achilles heel. That's vulnerability. It is a chink in the armor. It is the fact that it is the avenue into which you can hurt somebody. It is not the actual thing that you're talking about. It is not the actual, I lost my job. I've got a big old goiter on my fucking neck. I'm losing my hair. I've got genital warts. Whatever it is, right? Here's my this is why I feel vulnerable. No, we're just saying, like, I love it when we have to talk about like how we need a male influence in young men's lives And every time like they do some sort of criminal act, or they try to commit, they attempt suicide, or they're a drug addict, or they end up in jail, or whatever the fuck it is, the first thing we do is we say, where's the man? There he needs a strong masculine influence in there and blah, 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 so he can get in control of his emotions. What the fuck? Like, make up your goddamn mind. Oh, you need to be more vulnerable, blah, 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 blah. Fuck you and your vulnerability. The reason why people think that guys need to be more vulnerable, well, first of all, it's what, this is Jack Donovan, by the way. It's what's known as transvaluation. Transvaluation is a technique. It's more gaslighting, really, but it's a technique that is used to convince people that whatever they think is a pro something, it becomes a con, right? It's like whatever the opposite of a word is means the opposite of it, right? So strength is actually weakness. Weakness is actually strength. Vulnerability is not actually a vulnerability. It's actually a strength. And if you're more vulnerable, then women will like you. Well, guess what you're doing? You're pandering to women. You are aligning yourself and identifying with the feminine. You are a cusslefish, Chris Williamson, amongst other things. And men aren't saying, oh, don't be vulnerable. Oh, if you don't. Nobody's saying that, dude. We're saying you need to be in control of your emotions, which, by the way, I'm sure he's probably said a million times to Jocko Willink, which I'm sure he said to all these really, these positivity hustlers all the fucking time. Well, how do we get these dropout generation of boys back on the saddle, Jordan Peterson? How do we get these guys to man up and take responsibility, right? Well, they got to really be in control of their emotions. They really got to get things, hunker down and sack up and bootstraps, right? Oh, but be vulnerable at the same fucking time. Again, well, I'm going to continue here. We'll keep going. If your concern is that your partner will lose respect for you if she sees you being vulnerable, then one of two things is true. Oh, thank you. So here's your categories, because human beings love categories and they love lists too. Number one, your partner is incapable of having an emotionally open, mature relationship, and it's a massive red flag. What the fuck is an emotionally open, mature relationship? Explain to me the factors involved in healthy emotion. And I will, and you know what, they probably could. And every single one of those factors and those attributes will be nothing but pandering to a female experience. Guaranteed. Whenever we talk about oh, you need to express yourself, you need to get in touch with your feminine side, you need to be more vulnerable. That all that does is put men in the position of qualifying for women's approval. I can experience life more like a woman than this guy can. It becomes a competition for guys. I can out emote this guy, so therefore I'm the better guy, for a better candidate for you to have a baby with. No, and then of course what happens? Women want the guy who's looks like Jason Momoa and has dark triad personality traits. No. What is that? What constitutes that? And I guarantee if you ever even got a definition of that, it will be whatever serves the female imperative. Guaranteed it. Number two, your masculinity fundamentally rests on a fragile foundation. A single display of vulnerability is sufficient to push it over the edge. No, it's not. Because masculinity is not an act. It is a personality attribute, a conventional there are conventionally masculine attributes that men have that are part of our biology. It's part of how we evolved. It's part of the things that we men from all over the society, from different societies, all ethnicities, all cultures. There are certain aspects of masculinity that are universal, they're conventional. It is not an act. And this was one of the things that I wrote about way back in, I think it was my second book. It was vulnerability. It was actually called Vulnerability. And the reason why I drew attention to it is because there was a push during that time, that probably still going on right now, to convince men especially, that masculinity was an act, that it was a role, that it was a LARP. It was a play acting. And if you were real, if men could just let the facade down and be vulnerable, and if men could just let go of this macho bullshit that they're taught by society, because it's all social constructionism, if men could just let that go, we could perfect men. Okay, well, what would those perfect men look like? Women. That's what they would look like. They would be emoting like women. They would be experiencing things like women. They would have a filter through which they would view life and interpret their surroundings with that would be identical to the female experience. Guess what? We're not wired that way. They'd all be crying at the end of Titanic. Yeah, guess why we don't? We're not because we're emotionally stunted. It's because we just don't do that. We're different than you are. It has nothing to do with emotional security. It has nothing to do with, your masculinity is based on a single display of vulnerability. No. Okay. Your internal fear. I love this. Fear. Okay. Notice how this is everything in this whole diatribe this is the language of emotionalism. So we can pick out all of these. I mean, hell, they use the term emotional in all this stuff. But if you look at this here, I love this. Your internal fear, which is an emotion, is that you are inherently unlikable. Okay, so that might be emotional, and that you're one wrong move away from being friend zoned. Yeah, because it's happened often enough to enough guys that guys are wary of that. But it also might not be. It also might be that we just simply don't have the fucking hardware. That doesn't sound very high value. Okay, so now you're insecure if you're not vulnerable. Insecurity is, by definition, vulnerability. Is it possible that you have such a low opinion of women and youth and think they can't be trusted to help you when you're vulnerable? Then women are going to sense that in you and respond appropriately. Yes, they are. Because that's the way they're wired. They want protection, provisioning, and parental investment. They want a guy who has a capacity for violence. Just ask your good friend, Jordan Peterson. Those guys aren't crying on the bathroom floor. Those guys are out there taking scalps. Those guys are out there slitting throats, and then maybe they can change the baby afterwards. Thank you, Justin Waller, for that visual. Yeah. So make up your fucking mind. Who do you agree with? You agree with Jordan Peterson? You got to men need to be dangerous men, but they also got to be vulnerable. So what the fuck? What do they have to be? Where are they going to be at? Now, here, I'm going to throw this out there because I just saw this here saying vulnerability is pounced on. Women can't be secure with a guy who cries all the time. Right. The problem with the vulnerability bullshit is that guys wear it like a badge. It is a point of pride. I can be vulnerable. I'm not like other guys because I can be vulnerable with you. I can cry on demand. Oh, I just hated it when at the end and Jack slid down to the bottom of the ocean after Titanic, and it was just it was heart-wrenching. I'm feeling vulnerable. Hold me. Get the fuck out of here. What was it? When Captain Miller dies in Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, it was really emotional. It is. It's all. Thank you. Where is it? Wait a minute. Wait, stop there. It's all bullshit. It is all bullshit. But it's bullshit that's being sold and repackaged by grifting hustlers like Chris Williamson right now. Now, I've said this before. I will say this one more time. I actually mentioned this in the essay that I wrote about vulnerability long before Chris Williamson was on Total Drama Island or whatever the fuck show he was on. In that essay, I mentioned this. I said there's still a utility in being vulnerable for guys whose predominant character is alpha. If you're the kind of guy who doesn't wear his emotions on his sleeve, if you're the kind of guy who's, I hate to use the word stoic because it sounds like LARPing, but if you're a guy, for lack of a better term, if you're a stoic guy who's more, mental point of origin, you're your mental point of origin, and not much affects you. Like you're the rock, man. I don't mean the rock. I mean, you're the lighthouse in the storm, right? You're the guy whose emotions are very much measured, and you're the guy that can be looked to be dependable on. And you are the guy who, they're not very emotional. And when you are emotional, it's usually anger. Like guys express emotion all the time. It's usually just anger. That's our men's default. Angry, pissed off. It's not. Women cry. Men get pissed. I think that's probably one of the bigger issues right there. Like when women cry, men will come to their, what's wrong? What's wrong? The baby's crying? Oh, well, what's wrong with the baby? Men cry? You're a liability. You start crying, you can no longer defend the tribe. You can no longer defend if your default emotion is tears, you're her girlfriend. because it's an innate proclivity. That's why. You have to learn to cry on demand. You have to, like men, you got to teach men to be more in touch with their emotions. Yeah, that's the problem. So if you're the guy who is mostly alpha all the time, you're alpha and like I said, you're the dependable guy. Then when you do show some flash of emotion, some small vulnerability, women love that. Absolutely love that. And that's where this gets misconstrued. If your predominant personality characteristic is to be more alpha, then when you do show one moment, like your dog, God knows, I almost lost Ned, right? That one moment when your dad dies or your mom dies or whatever, your kid dies or what, God forbid, right? But like something happens in your life where it's like you are just overcome with emotion and you don't know what to do. That is the point where that woman goes, he's usually not like this. I'm the only one that can drag it out for him. I'm the only one that's here. I'm the only one he'll cry in front of. Because it becomes this ego appeasement. It becomes this association. Well, it's Beauty and the Beast, right? He's this hairy fucking beast, and he's just like, he's this big fucking bear with these big fucking claws, right? And only she can draw that out of him. Then yes, then vulnerability will work, but not if that big beast is a blubbering, crying idiot, and that's his default setting. He can use the example of this dude who's crying on the bathroom floor. Well, then he went out and challenged. He became a world champion. What? I don't know. But let's just say for sake of argument, he's correct. Yeah, the reason why that was remarkable is probably because that guy, his predominant characteristic, as he said, he's the most alpha guy I know. Yeah, that's why it was appreciated. If it's a guy that looks like Destiny, he's blubbering his eyes out all the time, and that's his default setting, he's a fucking wimp. He is a pussy at that point. That's the dynamic you're missing there. But once again, I'll stop sharing this right now because I don't put that whole thing on you guys. So if your predominant character is alpha, then yes, vulnerability will be appreciated by women, but up to a point. Because if you keep doing that, if you're this alcoholic piece of shit and you're crying on demand, I don't know what to do in my life. Oh, I'm vulnerable. Help me. She's like, get the fuck. I'm gone. Bye. Bye, bitch. Wait here. Hold on.
Bye, Felicia.
There you go. Yeah, she's out. I don't care if you think you're a pussy or not. Her being there and her not being there has nothing to do with you, like whether you think you're a pussy or you're not a pussy, or how legitimate your masculinity is. The fact of the matter, the empirical fact is she ain't there and you are. That's how it works.